As consumer demand for crossovers and SUVs reaches an all-time high, car manufacturers have to reach even higher to meet that demand. Now, Chevrolet in particular is doing something quite interesting in reviving classic brand names. First, they turned the Blazer into a modern family SUV, but now for 2020, they've revived another classic name. This is a 2021 Chevrolet Trailblazer. And unlike the Trailblazer of yore, which is a full-size family SUV based on a truck platform, this is a thoroughly modern compact crossover that slots in between the smallest Trax and the medium-sized Equinox. But is it any good? Let's find out. Alright, let's tackle the 2021 Trailblazer from front to back. After all, this is a brand new vehicle. You likely don't know too much about it, so let's just jump into it. Up front, there are a bunch of different powertrain configurations available. Standard in the LS trim is a 1.2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine paired to a CVT. It's a continuously variable automatic transmission. That's the entry-level option. However, any trim level above that, LT, this RS, the Active, whatever, the most popular ones, get upgraded to a 1.3-liter inline 4-cylinder engine like this one has. And in this case, because this car has the optional all-wheel drive, front-wheel drive is standard, this car has a 9-speed automatic transmission. Now that combination is good for 155 horsepower and 174 pound-feet of torque. What does that mean in the real world? Well, Chevrolet's engineers claim that this car is almost 2 seconds quicker from 0 to 60 than the smaller Chevrolet Trax, which is pretty impressive. From there, the EPA rates this combination with all-wheel drive at 26 mpg city, 30 mpg freeway, and 28 mpg combined. Though, in my experience, like almost every modern car that has a downsized engine with a turbocharger, you can expect the city figure to be a bit lower and the freeway figure to be a bit higher, and the average to be about right. That's at least what the trip computer in this car is saying. After doing a lot of around-town driving, the trip computer was saying I was averaging about 22 miles to the gallon. However, I reset it on the freeway and it's saying closer to 32 miles to the gallon. So obviously split the difference, and right in the middle, what is that, like 27 miles to the gallon? Right around the EPA estimate. Not good, not bad, but for a small crossover SUV with all-wheel drive, totally acceptable. Less acceptable is the 9-speed automatic transmission. I think this is one of the few times you're going to hear me say I'd probably prefer the CVT in the end. And that's because while this engine's pretty snappy and pretty peppy and pretty torquey, it seems like this transmission's kind of a step behind. Now, you notice it less on the open road when you're kind of cruising in a high gear and just occasionally need to kick down for a little bit more passing power. But especially like off the line, it seems like this transmission really kind of takes a second to kind of figure out what it's doing, what gear it needs to pick, kind of how it works. I'll leave you with one last performance stat related to the powertrain, and that is that Chevrolet claims Trailblazer can tow up to 1,000 pounds regardless of the trim you choose. Now, they went into a lot of detail about what people who typically tow around 1,000 pounds would typically be towing, and the most common answer was small boat or jet ski, which honestly makes sense. Now I bet you're curious, which trim level should I get? After all, I mentioned LS, LT, RS, Active. Now, according to Chevrolet, of the Trailblazers they've sold thus far, and yes, these vehicles are already hitting dealers lots across the country, the most popular trim thus far has been the RS with all-wheel drive, just like this car. Now that's going to set you back about $27,000. A no option, no frills car is just over $20K for perspective. And according to Chevy, at least what consumers are saying so far, this is kind of the sweet spot, and I have to agree with them. I'm sure the slightly larger engine is nice versus the basic one, but I think the big thing most people notice is the appearance package, because the RS trims really bumps up the appearance of Trailblazer and makes it look really handsome and really snazzy, especially compared to, more modest offerings like the Honda HR-V, which is pretty much anonymous. So the RS package gives you the split polished and black 18-inch wheels, a Camaro-inspired front bumper with the angry squinty running lights, the black mirror caps, the black floating roof, and an RS-specific blacked-out badging and a cool carbon fiber look rear valance of polished exhaust tips. Again, it's a really handsome package overall. You take the sort of upright and boxy shape and kind of give it that bit of extra flair, and it just looks polished and nice. As for the ride itself, if you've been in the smaller tracks with a slightly larger Equinox, of which this car splits right down the middle, you'll feel right at home here. The ride is soft and for the most part comfortable. With big impacts, you know, those huge expansion joints on the freeway, you do feel a bit of a heaving motion, but that's pretty typical of these smaller crossovers, because once they lift the suspension up, there's inherently more kind of up and down travel. But overall, really comfy, especially around town. Now, as you can see, I'm cruising along at some miles an hour, and there is some wind noise and some road noise. It's not unbearable. It's definitely not as bad as the Toyota CHR, for example, but it's probably not quite as good as some of the more premium offerings out there. I think this is where Honda does things a little bit better with their current crop of vehicles. The Trailblazer is nicely styled, but it is still a very boxy, practical shape under that styling. So, I'm 6'1", I have the driver's seat in my position. I have tons of headroom up here, and same for the passenger front seat, and same for both rear seats. I can hop in the rear seat with the driver's seat in my position and be very comfortable with several inches of knee room and several inches of headroom. It's like General Motors almost put probably 4 6'6" adults in this car instead of make them fit, and they did. On the flip side, however, it's absolutely worth mentioning that for the shorter viewers out there, this driver's seat, which is powered, has tons of adjustability. Now, I have it in the lowest possible setting. However, if you raise this guy up, it goes way up. Like, it goes way up. It goes really quite high up. I'm actually scared of heights from up here. This is actually terrifying. So yes, even if you're a shorter or smaller statured person, there's just tons of adjustability from the driver's seat, which is really nice. You know, they really thought about getting all kinds of people into Trailblazer. And that's important because these small crossovers often represent people's first foray into buying a crossover or an SUV. You know, a lot of people who buy this vehicle and vehicles like this previously came from smaller sedans and smaller cars. And so getting them comfortable with a vehicle, you know, that rides a bit higher and has this sort of adjustability is just a nice thing. It's clever. Equally clever is the tech in this thing, though you certainly do pay for the privilege. Now, I mentioned that this car, the RS with all-wheel drive, costs around 27 grand. However, this particular test car is $32,000. And that's because this car is loaded to the gills with tech and optional extras. Now, about 1,800 bucks of that is put in the power rear liftgate and this really cool dual-paned sunroof. I mean, look how huge, there's just so much glass here. That's really nice. You know, it brings a lot of air and a lot of light into the cabin. And the power liftgate, also a nice touch. Makes it way easier when putting groceries in, for example. Now, one of the other high dollar options is something I've never seen before in a vehicle, especially at this price point, and that is wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. Now, most new cars these days have some form of Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, but you have to use a cable and plug your phone into the car. With Trailblazer, if you tick that optional extra box, you can do all of that wirelessly in this car. So no matter where you're sitting in this car, no cable required. You can pair your phone up to this thing and have CarPlay or Android Auto, and that also includes wireless charging down here. But the party tricks don't end there, because this car is loaded with places to charge your devices. Micro USB, USB, aux port down here, SD card reader, and in the back, 2 more. Another micro USB and regular USB port, as well as a full-on outlet, or like a regular wall plug, is right here. So if someone in the back of your car wants to use a laptop or something to watch a movie during a road trip, you can absolutely do that. That's pretty cool. And of course, this car has General Motors' great backup camera system. Now, I think it's the same HD backup camera you'll find in like the Bolt and the Silverado. It's not quite as crystal clear, but still really nice. And along with the array of parking sensors this car has a suite of low-speed, active and passive safety tech, including blind spot monitoring, front and rear collision warning, rear pedestrian warning, cross traffic. It basically means that if you're driving this car at low speed, it's almost impossible to crash it. And if you do, it's probably your fault, or the person who hit you, it's probably their fault. it is worth noting that this car is basically factory fresh. I think my friends at General Motors basically did some break-in miles on this thing and then dropped it off my driveway, because even now, after driving it, it only has 754 miles on the odometer. So it's a factory fresh vehicle. And unfortunately, there are a few squeaks and rattles. The glove box has been rattling intermittently all day whenever I go over 65 miles an hour, and there has been a rattle from underneath the rear seat when I go over sharp bumps. There, right there, that was the glove box. Definitely disappointing. I'm hoping that's because this is such an early build date vehicle. You know, General Motors and Chevrolet basically earmarked this, you know, couple dozen Trailblazers just for media use. So I'm hoping because they're early build dates, they're a bit less well put together than the final production car, but God, that rattle is really annoying, the glove box, wow. But definitely disappointing to see that such a brand new vehicle. Overall, I think Chevrolet's done a pretty decent job in reinventing the Trailblazer into this modern image. Sure, it's not perfect, but no vehicle really is. However, for most people and most buyers who are actually looking in this segment, it ticks a lot of boxes. It's good looking, it's modestly priced for the most part, and it's jam-filled with a lot of really cool and useful tech that people do value in their day-to-day lives. So if you'd like to learn more about the new 2021 Trailblazer, click the link in the description down below. So you can check my full write-up on drivebrakefixrepeat.com. Otherwise, my name is Jake. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.